and welcome to the Emerald City Video Podcast. I am Russ, and he's Zach.
Hello, how are you doing?
Oh, just dandy. How are you?
I'm alive. I'm alive. That's I
Yeah,
to,
that's
to
probably more
immediately,
accurate.
because this is something that we both do. We both do the I'm alive answer. And I was in Wegmans the other day, and I live in Virginia now, so I have a little bit more Bible down here. And the person like previously had just been like, well, God bless, move on. And I had this this clerk before at Wegmans like many months ago, and so I'm like, oh, fuck, I just realized. And he was just like, so how you doing today? And I almost answered my I'm alive, because that was the way I was feeling. And I
Right.
was just like, I hesitated. I was like, I, and I had to like process, and it was literally like 3 seconds of me going, what's the answer? Because I don't like to lie to people in general, like just straight up to anybody whatsoever. It really, even in my undercover work as an investigative journalist, like it literally it burdens me and tires me out to lie to people in any way, shape, or form, which is why I try to stay truthful or whatever as much
Right.
as possible. And so I was just like, I'm doing okay. And like you could just see the Christianity, like both like burn, and also like the like evangelicalness. I won't say Christianity,
Yeah,
but the
yeah,
evangelicalness in this guy, like go burn for a moment and realize I'm at Wegmans. I'm at my job. I can't say anything. And it was
yeah,
just
yeah.
kind of like this like uncomfortableness between like I had 80, spent way too much money at Wegmans, as you do. But like, and so it was this very awkward like 5 minutes of him everything into my bag. and
Uh-huh.
and and I'm just like, I could have just like, this is what, why can't I just be normal, and why can't I just say I'm doing fine, how you doing,
Yeah, yeah.
or God bless you? And I was like, and then he says, as I walk away, he says God bless, and I was like, oh bless. But anyway, sorry.
Uh, yeah, it's been an exhausting few weeks, man.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
we had a lot of family in town the week before Easter, not actually the week of Easter.
yeah.
And so then you end up with like nonstop things filling every minute of your weekend, two
Mhm.
weekends in a row, because it's like you have family and then there's a holiday. And so
Yeah,
uh, that was a lot.
yeah.
I mean, it was mostly good, but it was just a lot. um,
No, it's tough.
uh, so we don't have as much of an agenda this time, mostly because like we've been wanting to record for 3 weeks, and so things keep kind of falling out of relevance a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh, there's shit that's on our docket that is really uh that's really old. We're gonna talk about a few specific things, but real quick first, uh, kind of do a round robin, a quickie employee recommendation.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you've seen, anything that you read, anything that you want to talk about a little bit before we jump in?
Oh my God. I just saw well, I did see okay, one, oh my God, I actually have to like Google. This is like, it is the most generic title. Anthony Hopkins' new film, uh the one about
Yeah,
the Holocaust,
I can't
One
remember what it's.
Life.
Yeah,
It took One Life, actually shockingly good. I saw it. I was down in Florida. My mom has a place down there now, and so I was down there, and like the theater pickings were a little, bent towards Florida audience, I think a little bit more.
yeah,
And we saw that, and I was shocked because like I was just like, okay, well, I know the meme. Like there's
right.
that video. It's about Anthony Hopkins. He plays a German man who, or no, British man, I'm sorry. A British man who basically um through getting documents and through different machinations during the start of kind of the lead up to the Holocaust, was able to save nearly 1,000 people.
Hmm.
And also there's this video that like continually, like if you're on Reddit, you've seen it. If you're on Twitter, you've probably seen it too. Like that just appears every once in a while. There where this man walks in and doesn't know that he's surrounded with all these people that basically he saved through like family, like basically through this original 1,000 people that he saved. There's
Right.
this entire audience of a British talk show.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I've seen the real video. I haven't seen
Yeah, yeah.
the
And
Hopkins
so
version.
that was my only disappointment in the film. And this is like spoilers if you
Yeah.
haven't seen it. I just close your ears for a minute because it's an excellent film. Anthony Hopkins does fantastic in it. He it also develops the film in a lot of better ways than those kind of like, oh, you have this one moment kind of films from
Yeah.
history. We're going to build an entire thing out of it. And like, there's characters that like, you're just like, oh, why does this? Oh, it builds out the film. And, and the history and kind of thing, the background of the character is also really great as well. And kind of even the characters that play all the younger selves are also very good in the film as well. So it's not just like, oh, it's a flashback film,
Right.
but yeah, I would highly recommend that One Life. Literally the only disappointment is that they do a very weird thing when they do the actual like the meme video, the video that everyone that knows this story probably
Has
has
seen,
seen a
right.
million times, and they kind of like do this weird like, I don't know if they didn't have the budget to have like 600 people in the audience or didn't have the
Mhm.
CG, you know, whatever you got to do that. So they had like
Yeah.
200 people. And like, so like after the film, my mom who knew nothing about the story whatsoever,
Mhm.
she was just like, oh my God, that scene was amazing. And I was like, that was actually my one disappointing scene. Like I was near tears in a lot of the film.
Yeah.
This is the generically the type of film that kind of like hits my
Right.
crying in a movie theater. I cry in a lot of movies. I cried in Armageddon. We all know that. Okay, shut up. But but this one, like they zoom out, and then it's like this tiny amount of people. It's like 4 rows of people, and I'm like, oh my God, the video had like 10 rows of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like this was like that. If you watch the video and you don't like openly weep,
Right.
like you got to take some tests online maybe and check out if you need to see a therapist. And but it was just like the whole rest of the movie is
Yeah.
like you're like on the verge of tears because it's a Schindler's List kind of thing,
Yeah.
but not done with the like, I hate to say, like obviously it's done in the past, not in the
Right.
future or not in the present, and so it's not as much of a like, okay, you're going in this film, this is an Academy Award film, nominated, going to be an Academy Award. I like at 12 I knew that Schindler's List was an Academy Award nominated film,
Right.
like when I watched it, in the theater.
Yeah. Before I knew
But
what
yeah,
Oscars were, there's certain movies that are
yeah,
Oscar.
yeah, you just like, okay, this is the vibe from this, and
Yeah.
also like, yeah, no shit. But then to completely the opposite of that is I finally watched Napoleon, which like a lot of great things. There's
Yeah.
a lot of great parts in it. I the entire time though, it felt like Phoenix was just basically playing a character who was just continually irritated to be wherever he was. And combined with the fact that it just felt in a lot of ways that it felt like oh, he's just playing the Joker.
Right.
Like he's just playing basically, I mean, which is to be fair, the way that they played Napoleon, I know very little about Napoleon
Right.
historically, so I don't know how much of a Joker like character he was.
Yeah.
Like, but it played that he was irritated with women. He,
Mhm.
only wanted things in a certain way. I just thought he was the smartest person in the room,
Yeah.
thought he was funny. And so it was like watching the entire film, and it's just like I can't get my space out of this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the only other thing, other than the other complaint I have with the film is that like it felt like the color correction was purposely dampened throughout the entire film, and it's like I can't. It's one of those like I kind of wish I had seen it in theaters because it's a theater film,
Right.
and but like it's weird that it didn't feel like this big gorgeous film other than in the way that like I like the biggest thing I compared it to was Barry Lyndon, because there was
Right.
a lot of like it wasn't about Napoleon the warrior as much as about Napoleon like political and personal,
Yeah.
and it really felt like that part of it was a dramatically large part of the film, but
Mhm.
also just not developed in a way that like just even Barry Lyndon was in the colors and the just like the emotions and everything like that and the filming. Like the big gorgeous battle scenes were pretty incredible, but like it is one of those films that Barry Lyndon, to me, I've watched it on a small screen, I've watched it on a big screen. Actually, I haven't not actually no, I forget it. I have not seen it on a big screen. I've not seen it in theaters. But I've seen it on like a larger screen.
Right.
Oh, I think actually no, I have seen it on a larger screen because I saw it when I was in film school and there was like a film
That's what I
school
was thinking.
size screen, not like a movie
Yeah.
theater, but something larger than just a standard projection or
Right.
standard TV at the time. And it didn't have the same depth that that film had, which was like we've advanced, and also like never mind the budget and the advancement in filmmaking and everything like that. I don't know. Fine. It was fine. Watch the film. It's one of those like I guess it's just too fucking long. Like just way too fucking long. Like
I was very disappointed to hear that there was no they cut the scene where he went to San Dimas and had the Ziggy Piggy. So uh
that was all that I could not like the two things I was waiting for him to do the chest, the famous like
yeah, yeah.
putting his hand in the thing because of like whatever the historical BS thing is that he had heartburn or something like that, which is supposedly why he always had his hand
I
like that.
Yeah, I always heard it was petit mal seizures, but
Yeah.
I assumed that that was just like a joke because
Yeah.
like petit mal in French means small and terrible.
Yeah.
And
It
so
there was a couple really great like small bits like where like they never talked about him being short, which like historically he was not.
right,
Like that was very much a play. I guess he was average, it was
right,
like he wasn't like like most of our presidents are above average height just because we're petty and can't understand that whatever. But he was not, he was like, I don't know, I'm making up a height, but he was like whatever average, kind of what somewhat average for him. But there was one time
right.
where he had to like put up a step stool to look at the same height as a mummy. But it was like, I know like there's a very, very few historical points that I know about Napoleon. And there's just like other than Waterloo was like the one big fight that they played out pretty well, which is like also disappointing because it was the one obviously that he lost. And
Right.
then like the one that they play, the only other one that they played out was the one that you see in the trailers a lot, where he's shooting cannonballs into a ice covered lake, and
Mhm.
every historian is like that never happened, like basically. And so it's just like one of those. I'm
Right.
like, I don't understand why are you making this film then? Like, there's a lot of like
Yeah.
great like he is like whatever you feel about him as a historical character, he's an
Right.
interesting person. Like getting exiled, coming back, and trying to almost successfully committing another whatever
Yeah.
weird revolution. Like watching the French Revolution as a character within that. Like he's a fascinating character, but it's just like
Mhm.
I also the biggest thing is I just don't understand like either like and this feels like something that's been happening a lot lately. Like it was kind of the same thing I felt about Oppenheimer, which was like
Uh,
make a fucking romance film about a famous character or make a film about that famous character's life. One or the
right.
other. Stop trying to make a romance film that also includes a fucking Holocaust.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like one or the other. It's just like okay, the only person we were talking about Schindler's List before was just like okay, there was like some weird romance, not romance in any way,
Right.
shape, and form, but love with whatever with Ray Fiennes.
Right.
Like there's some of that. Okay, you can make that, but that talks about the struggle and whatever. I don't understand why I need to see um Oppenheimer fucking in any scenario. I know we need to have these loves, like we need to have sex scenes and like long dramatic stories, but I don't understand. Like they played in Napoleon, he had the few sex scenes that they had, it was played for laughs because it was
Right.
like him fucking like a rabbit and then being done and her being disappointed. Um,
Mhm.
but it was one of those, I'm like, I just don't understand why I care about these two characters. And anyway,
Yeah.
they never developed on why his wife was important to him, other than
Yeah.
he loved her, which is fair, but it's just
Yeah.
like I don't understand. Like it wasn't anyway. Anyway, it was just one of those like weird. I'm just like, okay, I want a me edit of this film, and
Yeah.
it could be 2 hours long, and it would be the exact opposite of like it would be the studio cut basically, which
Yeah. Yeah.
cuts out all the fucking in the 80s. So it's just like I just don't understand why we have this in here.
Yeah.
Like make that film or don't make that film. Like you can't
Yeah.
do both.
Uh
Anyway.
I I had a real similar experience with Priscilla recently. A24, the
Yeah,
Sofia Coppola one. I don't know if you saw that movie or not.
I've
Um,
not yet. No.
so it's a weird movie, and I as I was watching it, I kind of hated it. Um, and then I got to the end, and I was like, oh, so that's what she was trying to do.
Yeah.
Um, and it made it, at least in theory, better.
Yeah.
But I still like did not enjoy the entire experience of watching the film. Um, the big thing is like they play the relationship between uh Priscilla Presley and Elvis very straight.
Yeah.
Like, he meets her when he's already famous and she's 16,
Yeah.
and then like essentially adopts her so they can go have sex for all intents and purposes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's played kind of shockingly straight. There are very few moments in the movie where anybody voices any concern about that relationship.
Yeah.
And like um and so the whole movie kind of plays like a fairly straight love story,
Mhm.
and you feel kind of like the whole time there's something in the back of your head like we should be acknowledging that this is gross.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the movie, the like the conclusion of the film, like the big moment at the end of the movie, is that she finally has enough and leaves him.
Yeah.
And like that's the happy ending, is her driving out of Graceland.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I think like I think Coppola was trying to make it unsettling and trying to like trying to make it so that you appreciate the movie more in
Yeah.
retrospect, because
Yeah.
like you get to that point and you're just like, oh yeah, we were building to this.
Yeah.
But like it just didn't work for me because
Yeah.
it felt like um I don't know, there was just a lot of like things where it just didn't feel like the movie respected Priscilla Presley. Um,
Yeah.
and I understand that like it's based on her autobiography, and she wrote this autobiography essentially as exclusively an autobiography of her romance with Elvis.
Yeah.
Like she's like, I'm just gonna write the part people care about and leave the rest of the stuff out.
Fair.
Um, but like it just, I don't know, the whole movie had a really weird vibe to it. And like I said, I by the end I like, oh, okay, so she was doing this on purpose because it's a different movie when you get to the end. You get to the end and you realize what it was that you're supposed
Yeah.
to have been watching. But like the way the movie is shot, like there's no conflict in the movie for the most part
Yeah.
that kind of gives you hints that like this is what we're supposed to be trying to do. Like
Yeah.
there are moments, but honestly, the moments feel more like the kind of common um obstacles in any romantic drama.
Yeah.
Like, there's she feels abandoned when he goes off and tours without her and doesn't call her enough.
Yeah.
And, and like she's stuck in this giant mansion where nobody she doesn't know anybody. And um Elvis's people are fine to her, but like not warm.
Yeah.
And so like, but yeah, it was just one of those things. It was just one of those movies where I was like, man, this. It feels like you really just needed your main character to be a little bit more the main character.
Yeah.
Like I felt like the movie just wanted to be something else,
Yeah.
and it really didn't come together. Like I said, until the last couple of shots, and then you're like, oh, so that's what this was. Well, that's odd, because that's not how you shot it or framed it, or
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
do.
that was
Yeah.
that was a similar thing where I was just like, I feel like sometimes it's like there's just a bidding war to get the rights to something,
Mhm.
and then it's like, okay, well now we got to make it because we
It,
bought it.
it's one of those, like, it's kind of like every single film about the famous person that's told basically from the perspective of the journalist,
Yeah,
that's like telling it. Like, I never understand, or I'm like, okay, well then make a film about a journalist trying to tell this story, or just make it about the person. And then they
Right.
kind of try to do this kind of half-ass thing,
Hmm.
like, that which is kind of almost the same thing, where it's just like, oh, we couldn't get almost always kind of feels like, make it a story about her
Hmm.
dealing with all this shit, or make it a film about fucking Elvis and
Right.
how he treated his wife, his very underage wife, shitty,
Right.
in the way that, like, we don't have these conversations. Which
Right.
is like, which the only other film, because we haven't talked for a long, we haven't done a podcast in a long time, so I'm like, the only
Yeah.
other film that, because you're talking about this and I'm like kind of thinking in a lot of ways of Poor Things, which
Hmm.
I know that I hated with a desperation. I don't Have you seen it at all?
I haven't. You told me a little
Okay.
bit about it when you saw it.
I hated the first half of the film with a level of desperation that, like, I would have walked out if I wasn't with other people.
Right.
And then the back half of the film, I was like, okay, cool, kind of, okay. And then
Yeah.
basically, like, after having multiple conversations and kind of like all the adulations and everything like that about the film, like, more and more like people are talking, is this like incredibly, incredibly amazing feminist film, which, like, I'm a white straight dude, so, like,
Yeah.
don't listen to me
Yeah.
about my opinions of this film. But it was one of those, I'm like, I remember having just like, my immediate reaction was like, it's Frankenstein meeting Lolita,
Yeah.
which is a fucking sentence that I never thought I would say in a million years. But and like, which to me should have been like, if anyone ever, if I had read the script, 3, 4, or 5, whatever
Yeah.
years ago, whatever it was, like, getting developed, and I said, oh, this is Frankenstein meets Lolita, someone should have said, fuck, we need to burn this script. And because that's like a combination of things. But it was just like, I never, like, the first half of the film is her getting raped as a
Yeah.
child, um continually, and then kind of the back half of the film is her getting, like, infantilized by
Hmm.
grown men consensually.
Hmm.
And so it was like, I have not heard or read, and I've read quite a bit about it, because I'm like,
Right.
I want to be wrong about it. I want to be like, I misunderstood this film. I read too much Nabokov when I was in my early 20s, like you do, like,
Yeah.
straight white males often do. And and like, it affected me too much or something. And I'm just like, I don't, but it's directed by a straight white male. Like, it's like all of the, like, and machinations of this, all the kind of the surroundingness of the film, where I'm just like, honestly, if this film had come out in the 80s, I think I would have been like, I'm forgiving of it, and I understand it, and I understand
Right.
how it come up. But like, the adulations that this film has got, look at Emma Stone, great in it. Did she deserve the Academy Award? I don't think so. Um, I don't think she acted too much in the film. But honestly, like, and like, but the I guess that, like, I know the cheap bit that I've been using kind of to vaguely insult this film has been, one thing Hollywood loves is a young woman pretending to be a child and getting fucked. So,
Yeah.
um, like, I knew when, like, she was nominated, I'm like, there's a really good chance she's gonna win for
Yeah. Oh
this,
yeah.
because
I
I
haven't
also
seen it.
I love Emma Stone. So, like, it's not an insult to
Yeah.
her. Like, I love her in everything she does. She's one of my few actresses, or one of my few actors and actresses that, like, I go, which is like half of the people in this film, like the leads, like Mark Ruffalo, he's in a film, I will watch that. Willem Dafoe, he's in a film, I will watch that. So it's like,
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
have to sell me too much on this film.
Right.
And so, like, it was just, and it's a gorgeous film. It's very like Terry Gilliam. It's very much a film, but it also felt like, where is the oh, it's my DVD. It felt like a film that Terry Gilliam made, um, which I'm reaching for the name of it in my head. Um, that got a lot of, like, way, it's the sorry, this is, we'll take a moment.
That's all right. I'm just trying to think of what.
Let's go out to the movies.
Oh
Tideland. It
yeah.
had
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
like, just anytime it's like where you sexualize a child, like, or not a child, yeah, yes, a child. I'm not going to say a child,
Right.
but like I, it would have been, it would be. I think the film itself would be a bit more interesting um if Emma Watson didn't look like she's. I mean, she's going to be a woman that looks
Stone.
like,
Right.
yeah. Oh, sorry, Emma Watson, Emma Stone. Yes. Both of them for this conversation, but Emma Stone,
Yeah.
in this very particular conversation, where it's just like it's interesting because like she's a woman that's going to look like she's in her early 20s until she's 65 probably,
Right.
because she won the genetic lottery. And but I don't know, it
Eventually,
just
she'll do a Fountain of Youth movie with Paul Rudd, and
there you go. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, if
uh,
they need to have they need to like genetically have like just share and have a child, and like that child will like be able to be like the teen actor that plays the teen,
yeah,
like
yeah,
be able to do a teen like Nickelodeon series until they're in their 50s,
yeah.
and
Just
Disney.
play they could be the live action Stewie Griffin, where you're like 15 and you're just
Yeah,
no.
yes.
Um,
Anyway,
I will say before we get move along that like I've had it's always weird because it feels like you're being so prudish, but like I've had so many times where there's a movie like that where I'm just like, sometimes I feel really uncomfortable when it feels like a filmmaker is reveling too much
mhm,
in like putting and it's usually young women
yeah,
through the ringer in a really
yeah,
gross way.
yeah,
You see it a lot in like you see some of it with Tarantino.
yeah,
You see fucking Larry Clark, obviously with Kids and Bully. It was like
yeah,
that's the fucking dictionary definition of it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and like I tend to be turned off by those movies, even if on paper they feel like there's something that I should like,
yeah.
because I'm just like, I don't know, man, something about it. Like, there's a lot of times when if I feel like this doesn't feel like it's serving the story, it feels like it's you indulging something,
Yeah,
you
Luc
know?
Besson is the probably preeminent,
Yeah, yeah.
like especially when he ends up marrying half of his ingenues. Like,
Yeah.
so, but yeah,
I feel the same way right now about Savage Dragon, which is frustrating as hell. Because I've been obviously a huge supporter of that book for years and years, and I just published a book of my first couple of years of interviews with Eric. But like increasingly, like there's all the like weird sex stuff that's been in the book pretty consistently for about 50 issues now, which like because Eric's been behind for a lot of the last 50 issues isn't even like 4 years. It's like seven. Um, and I typically don't mind that, especially because that's a book where it's like very much one guy's very singular view of the universe, and like
yeah,
this is his thing. The problem I have with it recently is that like when it's part of the story and like whether I personally enjoy it or not, it's like doing something.
mhm,
I don't mind it. The thing that bothers me is when you're like, oh, all of these girls wear short skirts and no underwear, and so there's randomly like
yeah,
genitalia on
yeah,
panel,
yeah,
and it's like it has nothing to do with the story. She's at the fucking drugstore,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's the kind of stuff that tends to like put me off. Um, this issue that came out last week, Mickey Mouse runs up and grabs the main character's wife by the vagina and then continues to stalk and harass her until she loses him.
mhm,
And I'm just like, I don't, I'm tired.
yeah.
um,
I've got it's gotten weird for me. Like it's funny, especially as like as I feel like some of it's like I've never really liked in one of the big things about like especially art cinema, like where it's just like, no,
yeah,
we're making a serious film here. We're not making True Lies. We're not making a film
yeah.
that's like, but we got to hit that $150 million budget, box office, whatever. Um, I've never understood why like gratuitous sex,
Yeah.
and it's been funny because like a lot of the film people on Twitter that like I follow have been like because like a lot of the conservative kind of world has been like pointing out, be like, oh, we have too much sex in cinema, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like we do.
Yeah.
And this is like one of the things where like I respect the fuck out of like Sydney Sweeney is I think she's a very good actress.
Right.
And but like the like her I don't know, you're not on Twitter anymore, but like there's this big
Yeah.
right wing weird, completely uncalled for because she has no connection to the right wing whatsoever, but this weird
Yeah.
right wing defense, not to, or like almost an offense for Sydney Sweeney, and because
Well, of course, because she's a
she's
hot
well endowed,
blonde.
you
Yeah.
know, and she's hot and she's blonde and she's whatever. And so it's just like this weird thing where it's just like all these people just know her from Euphoria, where she was
Right.
playing an underage girl having sex naked. And it's like this very weird where I was just like, I've tried to watch the episode, like everything seems to be very good about that show. Like it's
Right.
fine, but it's like when it's like I feel uncomfortable. And I get it. Like I feel uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that other people should not watch it and
Right.
not feel uncomfortable, but like it does. There is a lot of like watching again, like watching Oppenheimer. I was just like, I just don't understand why I'm seeing all these like nude scenes. Like because it wasn't like I get that there is just general nudity when you're playing like there's an
Right.
argument happening after sex or after something and like nudity happens, but there was like very clear she's sitting in a chair buck fucking naked, and like I'm not like like and I don't understand. I'm like, what is this? What does this role? What does this play other than
Yeah.
like making the audience like either uncomfortable or aroused?
Hmm.
And like I guess like again, it was just like if it's like a very art film, or I'm like, I get it.
Right.
You want to have the audience have this confusion to level, but I'm like, that's not Nolan. Like I've been a Nolan
Yeah.
fan since his first film came out on DVD, and like that's not the way that he's ever directed, and it's not the way that play it. And I'm like, I don't know. It's just it's such a confusion because I'm like, I get that like people are um I get that we're having this conversation and that there's a lot of it. And I get that some people are uncomfortable and some people
Right.
are, going basically like immediately kind of being defensive
Hmm.
of what may seem like being prudes. But it's also at the some time where I'm just like, I don't get what does it do to the story?
And
And
that's
like there's
kind of
been a
my
few
thing. Like,
actors that have come out been like, I don't understand. I forget who the actors have been, but there's been a couple actors who've come out and been like, I just don't understand what it does for the story. I don't understand what nudity does. A lot of times I feel like it's just kind of justified. And like I don't disagree.
mhm.
Like if it's James Bond, it's James Bond. If
Right.
it's, if it's, the if it's a romance story that also happens to be something else, then I get it.
Right.
But if it's like again, if it's fucking Oppenheimer,
Yeah. Uh, all right.
anyway.
So, uh, kind of segueing from there, just because I think
We're like,
we're gonna
let's
start.
segue away from Zach's prudity, right?
No,
We're like,
but like I said,
yeah,
it's a very similar thing to
yeah,
how I feel, where it's
yeah. I
like
know, I know, I know.
me, if it doesn't serve a narrative
Yeah.
purpose, then I start
I
to
mean,
be a
but
lot more
to me, the
bothered than,
same thing with like big action, like big explosions and stuff like that, where I'm just like,
yeah.
if it doesn't serve a narrative purpose, a lot of times, I'm like, I just don't understand what's happening. To me, it's like kind of the same with like a dozen different like things that happen in films, where I'm just
Right.
like, I just don't understand why. I mean, I get it, like because I mean, like I get that there's also the temptation, like, look at we're hitting the R rated, we might as well
Right.
do the R rated, and it's just like
Right.
unless you're Deadpool. I don't understand why you have to be like, fuck it. Literally.
Yeah. So, have you seen Loudermilk?
I have not. I have a lot of people recommend it to me.
I haven't seen it either, but it's a really interesting um, example of a phenomenon that I think is really worth looking at. I got this press release a while back, and a lot of the time you get these press releases where it's like, "Oh, look, we're in the top 10 nationwide on fucking Netflix or whatever," and I don't pay a lot of attention to those
Yeah.
press releases because it's just it's just like, "Hey, we crossed 100 million at the box office." It's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, that's great for you. It's not really news. But this one was interesting. I don't remember. So Loudermilk ran from 2017 to 2020. It was a modest success. I believe it was originally on Prime Video. No, it was originally on the Audience channel, um, which was like an AT&T pay network. And then when that stopped existing, it went to
Netflix, right?
Prime Video. Well, the Netflix thing is what's interesting, and that's what I
Yeah.
want to kind of talk to you about, which is I got this infographic. Apparently, the highest that Loudermilk had ever been, or lowest, whatever but like the most successful it had ever been on the streaming charts was somewhere around 750.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then it went to Netflix and it was number 9.
Yeah.
And this is this is one of those things. I think we talked about this a little bit before, but I feel like this is a great kind of object lesson in how this, like, Netflix has already functionally won the streaming wars.
Yeah.
Like, there are hits elsewhere.
Yeah.
But there's absolutely nothing like being a hit on Netflix.
Yeah.
You look at, it's the same thing with Suits.
Mm-hmm.
Suits was a beloved show. It was well received. It ran for like 6, 7 seasons, whatever it was, on USA. It came to Peacock and did just fine. And then it went to Netflix and for some reason just like found its niche and became the most watched show in the history of streaming or some crazy shit.
Yeah.
And now it's like getting a spin-off.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is a show that was canceled 5 years ago and it's getting a spin-off because like it 180 million people watched it on Netflix.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's interesting to me because, again, like Netflix, we talk a lot about how the last time anybody was really happy with streaming was like the early days of streaming when basically everything was on Netflix.
Yeah.
And you weren't paying for 13 services and it was blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And like some of that is like just what happens in the market. Like there are going to be other people who come in. The rights are going to be complicated. Like it's, but I also feel like it speaks to how much Netflix is still considered indispensable, that like something can become a cultural phenomenon just by virtue of like going to Netflix and getting lucky one week. And it's like the Loudermilk thing is just fucking wild to me because like even when you look at Suits or Psych or any of those shows, it's like they do fine on Peacock. Like those shows are always in Peacock's like top 10. It's like The Office and then a bunch of the like USA Blue Sky stuff. It's,
Yeah.
But like the idea of like going from number 9 on Peacock where 80,000 people are watching to number 1 on Netflix for 18 weeks in a row. You know what I mean?
Loudermilk ranked in Nielsen's top. I was just looked up a Deadline article about it. Nielsen's top 10 streaming originals, January 8th through 14th. Loudermilk ranked number 8 with 846 million viewing minutes, which, like, again, always take any of these numbers because, especially Netflix's numbers, like always take them with a gallon, a bucket, entire shipping fleet of salt. But it is,
one might say, a city of salt.
Yes. What city is that, actually? Anyway, the same city that Orange for some reason is the, anyway, not going to get into branding. But it is fascinating because it's also funny because it's also the one subscription service right now I don't pay for. I don't have any subscription. I don't have any connection to whatsoever because I just kind of gave up on it because it's all just random kind of crap now. Like, unless you're like into this one show, you're into this like one thing. For me, Hulu is that kind of version. It has like American Dad, it has a whole bunch of other shows that I watch on kind of repeat. And I know that with Netflix, like for some people, there's a lot of shows that's on there, but like Netflix has 0 for me that does it. Other than goddamn Ripley starts tomorrow. I'm driving nuts. The new
the new Talented Mr. Ripley one.
Which I'm like, fucking pissed off because I'm like, it looks fucking amazing.
Yeah, it looks
But
great.
it is one of those weird things where it's just like I think it also because I've been thinking about this a lot too as I rewatched um Reacher for the 17th, which such not a show like that hits my demo like of like who I am as a person. And as I'm watching the second season, which is like a show meant and created for boomers in a way that like I just didn't notice before.
Yeah.
I don't think the first season was necessarily meant in that way as much. I think they definitely like saw who was watching and was like,
Oh yeah.
okay,
It
boom.
definitely leaned
Because
into that.
literally the opening scene is Reacher walking into a used clothing shop, um, and being irritated about somebody who's on their cell phone. Like, and I was
Yeah.
just like, oh, and irritated in such a way that like it's it's very clear that it's not just like the same way I would be irritated and like I'm like, okay, come on, we need to get
Yeah.
this transaction done. Let's just do this. Like, I don't care that you're on your cell phone, but like in a way that
But I
like,
care that you're being obstructive. Yeah.
yeah. I was just like, how kids are on their cell phones these days. But it is a show that I've watched. I've watched the first season probably 4 times, and the second season, I think I'm on my third. If I didn't just finish it, I'm trying to remember if I finished it last night or not.
Yeah.
And it includes a show. It includes a moment that is a very specific drop you out of a helicopter thing, which is
Yeah.
a story that I wrote
Yeah.
about how it's a very specific Pinochet meme that the
Yeah.
Proud Boys love. So it's
Yeah.
such
I noticed that when
cool.
I was watching. I was like,
I
wow,
was just like, I saw that
that's a
in the
choice.
fucking trailer. They had that in the fucking trailer. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh no. This is like my one enjoyment. I get to like at
Yeah.
night, like I'm done with all my bullshit or whatever that I'm doing
Yeah.
and or claiming that I'm doing. And like I sit in front of the TV and watch 2 or 3 episodes of this show, and I'm like, fuck, they're gonna fucking do it. Anyway, but it's a fascinating phenomenon to watch like certain shows do really well in certain things because but also at the same time like watching being a person who doesn't really watch a lot of Netflix even when I had a subscription like
Right.
immediately like going why the fuck is like I remember a couple maybe 2-3 years ago being on TikTok and being like why the fuck is Suits I never watched the show
Mhm.
but I knew that it existed
Right.
um getting all this attention and that was like the exact same time it got on Netflix and
Mhm.
realizing that like that's the TikTok demographic
Yeah.
is on that and so they're pulling all these episodes and pulling whatever never mind like I have my conspiracy brain is the fact that like basically half of TikTok is basically people who are like have some connection to these shows doing the like the accounts that like do every
Yeah.
like whoever gets some like residuals from House very clearly is like every episode we're doing the pull clips and making
Yeah.
people
Oh yeah.
suspenseful and being like oh whatever because it drives me nuts because it's like House is a show that I never fucking watched even though I love what's his nuts the main actor I never watched it but like watching it on TikTok I will watch
Mhm.
it for like 45 minutes
Mhm.
anytime like before I go to bed but I will never turn on an episode if it's on TV as I'm watching it I'll turn on to the next to a different show I'll never watch it
Yeah.
but yeah anyway long rant sorry
Sorry, I inadvertently unmuted instead of muting before blowing my nose that time. Um, Anybody who's not watching the YouTube version, I am like profoundly congested and I've been just like muting to blow my nose every 40 seconds or so.
the I don't know if the pollen my car looks like and this is something I told multiple people just to irritate them. And we were like, my car looks like a tree bukkakied over my entire fucking car. It is my car is white and it is
Mhm.
green. I just washed it today, so
Mhm.
by tomorrow. I had my doors open, which don't have
Oh,
screens,
yeah.
and just for like 3 hours, and like literally like every my desk, my everything was covered. It was turning green. Like
Yeah.
Virginia right now, if you're in the Hampton Roads area, it is yeah. Yeah, full pollen, full fucking craziness. It's so yeah.
Ugh. Up here, it's just doing its thing where it
Mhm.
has wild 40-degree temperature
Yeah.
swings between like Monday and Thursday in any given week.
Yeah.
Um, So so yeah, I thought this thing with Loudermilk was super interesting because again, it speaks to like how
Mhm.
dominant Netflix continues to be, even though there is ostensibly like 30 competitors in the
Yeah.
marketplace at this point.
Yeah. This is a
Uh
lot of great. I mean, like it's actually something that's like kind of really irritating because like all the shows that like have been fascinating me over the last like say 3-4 months have been on other networks. Like I got an Apple Plus. My aunt for some I forget what she wanted to watch the Idris Elba show or a mini series that they had about the TV about the airplane. Excuse me, about the airplane was actually which was pretty good. Um,
mhm.
so I ended up getting I've been for some reason getting into the MonsterVerse, the
Oh
Godzilla
yeah.
and everything like that.
Yeah.
And the show on Apple Plus, sorry. The show that Apple Plus that's about Godzilla and about other things, which I'm blanking on the name of. I only like obsessed over it for several weeks, which is absolutely fantastic.
Mhm.
Like, we're definitely doing this impromptu because I have not prepared any of this. But it is with Kurt Russell, um, Monarch, which I remembered
Oh
before I
yeah.
even finished the Google. Monarch is actually like I think it's genuinely a fantastic thing, and I've been rewatching all the Godzilla films, and I actually think that Monarch is a better show than the Godzilla movies in that world are, and
Yeah.
which is surprising because I've actually kind of liked it. I mean, if you get it whenever the fuck that comes back, whenever the fucking comes into physical video,
Yeah.
or back into screens, if you get a chance to see Godzilla minus one,
Mhm.
holy fucking shit,
I
so
still
fucking
haven't.
good.
I
Oh my
really want
god,
to.
I
That's
know.
when I think I requested like a review copy of the
Mhm,
Steelbook
mhm.
because I keep really wanting to get started on a like a physical
Yeah,
media
same.
review thing. By the way, I will say Steelbook copy
Totally.
of Amelie just
Yeah.
came out. Um, and I haven't seen this movie in ages. It was a lot better than I expected it to be.
Mhm.
Like, I loved it when I was a kid, but like, there's a lot of like pretentious artsy shit from the like late '90s and early 2000s that I
Yeah.
loved then. And you rewatch it and you're like, oh my God, this is
Mm.
insufferable.
And
Um,
that film I actually didn't see until it was full blown, like every fuck
everywhere.
students like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
orgasm film. I and which I'm kind of happy because I watched it and I'm like, this film is adorable and amazing, and
Yeah.
she's adorable and amazing, and
Yeah.
everything about it is great. Kind of like I guess Cinema Pretty, so I saw when it was being seen by a lot of people. I saw in the
Yeah.
90s. Like I was kind of like when everybody saw it.
Yeah.
That wasn't, in the
Yeah.
theaters. I wasn't able to see it in the theaters. But like that film definitely was one of the films that I like put off for a very long time because I was
Mhm.
like, oh, like I hate these like it's adorable French, French. And I
Yeah,
was
I
like,
did
ah,
that with
fuck, it's fantastic.
fuck. I did that with Zach Braff's directorial debut. The one with Portman,
Garden State.
Garden State.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I loved the movie once
Yeah.
I actually saw it, but I had the same thing. It was just like I saw everyone's responses to
Yeah.
it and was like, oh, I know what this is gonna be. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I will say the Lionsgate people have been very, and the Sony people have been very good about hooking me up lately. I also got this, which I think comes out next week. I don't think it's technically out yet.
Mm,
It is both Red movies.
nice.
Oh yeah, for anybody who wasn't watching video, the previous movie we talked about was Amelie.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
just
sorry.
held up the steelbook and was like,
Yeah, I neither and
um,
neither of us said the name. Sorry,
yeah,
yes, we were talking about
uh,
Amelie before, not yeah,
this
but
one here
yes,
is a
Amelie,
two.
very good film.
Yeah,
If you for some reason haven't seen it, yeah, watch it. Which is
yeah,
also one
and
of
that
those weird things where like it's again as a person who's like I spend out of all the social media that like I enjoy, like I'm on
yeah.
Twitter because I hate myself and my job is terrible. That's why I'm on Twitter.
Mhm.
Um and like Facebook, I'm not really on that much, but I'm like the one social media site that I'm on that I enjoy is TikTok, which if
Mhm.
those motherfuckers take it away from me, I will be doing the next January 6th with all these other fucking, tweens. I mean, like I'll be on there with like every other person under the age of 18. It'll be very weird. But is the fact that like they discover these films and they discover like I remember a couple months ago seeing somebody like discovering Amelie and discovering
Yeah,
all these older films and I'm like which aren't even like to me They're not
Yeah.
older films. And
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, they were like, I found this old film, and it'd be like some
Yeah.
early 90s film. And I'm like, I
It's great because I
what?
have the same thing. I I have a really limited patience for it, so I'll like
Mhm.
watch a bunch of them and then not do it for months at a time. But like every now and again, I love like just searching up like teenagers hearing like Born to Run for the first time.
I was like, please
Uh,
finish that sentence quickly, Russ.
uh, like like a lot of like
Russ just
uh
like searching up teenagers. Anyway,
teenagers.
but yeah,
Yeah.
we're searching whatever.
But no,
No, but yeah.
I like I tend to really enjoy those like videos on YouTube and
Mhm.
shit where it's like Gen Zer
Yeah,
sees X thing for the
yeah.
first time and like there's these two kids I can't remember what their name is. I'll try to find a link and I can send it to you for the description.
Mhm.
But it's like these two like probably 22-year-old black guys
Yeah,
who I believe are musicians themselves and they're like going back and listening to a bunch of old shit
yeah.
that's not like the stuff they grew up with. And the first time they watched Born to Run, it was like just adorable. They were just it was the best.
It's something that like, and it's just like as a fellow Bruce Springsteen,
Yeah.
fan, to put it lightly, it is something that's like always kind of perplexed me that like all of these bands have gotten their covers and their like worship, all these big things, and Bruce seems to be, other than like I'm trying, I'm trying to think of who, like there's been a handful of bands that have covered kind of lightly
Mhm.
Bruce, but like he's never gotten the Taylor Swift, he's never gotten the, he's never gotten like the rap, you're the
Yeah.
hip hop artists or anything like that kind of treatment in the way that has, and so it's always been very
Outside of
weird that
Band in
one.
the USA, but
Yeah, but I mean, like, I'm talking about like, I mean, like in the modern kind of the
yeah.
more like TikTok era where it's just like, oh, like fucking all these bands from the 70s have gotten, because they were on because they were on Stranger Things or something like that,
Yeah,
have
yeah.
gotten like this huge revival, and they're now like just they're like the music of TikTok, like they're
Yeah.
not of the like past generation. It's just very weird. And like I don't necessarily hate it, because I'm like, I kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
like not having to listen, I mean, like if
Like the
I think
other
if I had to
version. Yeah.
listen to Thunder Road every single time I like went on TikTok,
Yeah.
I think I'd probably get irritated, especially
I
considering it'd
think
be used in ways that I wouldn't like. But
it's also funny because I think part of it is that Springsteen has his like weird little nest
Mhm.
of like successors.
Yeah,
It's like you have Vedder, you have Badly Drawn Boy, and Jesse Malin and Gaslight Anthem and guys like there's all these
yeah,
people who are very specifically like Springsteen is my president.
yeah,
Um, and outside of those guys, it's very closed off, and it's fascinating because he was and continues to be like a massively popular artist who sells just bananas numbers of records and blah 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 blah. But yeah, you're right. He doesn't have that same like you don't have the Beatles thing where
yeah.
like you have a bunch of A-listers coming together to do a tribute album. You
Where you don't
know?
have the like the cultural like drip down. Like there's a lot of, I mean, I think that there's a lot of people, because it's interesting, as like we're both kind of in that, you're technically Gen X. I'm, elder millennial. And
Yeah.
so we have this very weird kind of cultural outlook when it comes to music, film, everything, that
Mhm.
like Monty Python was a deep part of our cultural impact, at the
Yeah.
same time Upright Citizens Brigade, and
Yeah.
even SCTV. If you had like the
Yeah.
weird, for me it was the Weird Ant, that had the
Yeah.
DVD or the VHS collection. Like obviously that one you had to kind of dig deep a little bit more for.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like all of these weird things where it's just like we have this weird entirety of arc where it's like I get along, I'm able to have a conversation. I remember one of my like the funniest thing, because like I listened to Jack Many as a
Yeah.
kid on old audio tapes that they sold like through our NPR station. And like that was the way I fell asleep to, like LSMFT, Lucky Strike means fine
Yeah.
tobacco. So easy. Like I knew Jack Benny jokes before I knew Disney jokes.
Right.
But like because of physical media, like to draw this back to kind of
Yeah.
our topic
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
this show is, but like And so it's because of these audio cassettes. And so like I remember like the first time, like I was 19 years old, one of the youngest people ever get hired at Barnes and Noble, because
Yeah.
they don't like to hire young kids, and at our local store.
Yeah, that doesn't.
And like we had our elder manager who was like the gruff guy that like didn't who was like good but like didn't get along with people,
Yeah, yeah.
like, that kind of guy. And I just like he was just like, I forget what he said. He's just like, your money or your life. And I just immediately I'm doing the Jack Benny of like putting my hand underneath my elbow up to and then my hand on my face, and I go, I'm thinking. And he immediately just like dropped his jaw and looked at me and was like, what? And I was like, what? You made a Jack Benny reference. And he just like looked at me and was like, what? And I was just like, what? I've been listening to Jack Benny. I know every episode of Jack Benny, a radio show, since
Yeah,
like I've
yeah.
listened to every episode. I know them by heart. You mention an episode, I'll tell you what the joke was. And like immediately became friends. And it's like this weird thing where it's like we have access to everything in the fucking planet when it comes to technology, but
Yeah.
because of the kind of Netflix holes or the Amazon Prime, like the different kind of things, we don't like I don't want to go down on a kids these days rants because
Right,
they
right.
have their own things. There's a lot of tons of things that I don't fucking understand. I gave up trying to understand music about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of the same thing with like television, where it's the same thing, where it's just like, okay, there's a lot of TV, but um, it is weird that I feel like we don't have any of that cultural connection. And I think that has
Mhm.
a lot to do with physical media, where we're all being like siloed into certain
Yeah.
things, and I'm like, because I mean, like, look at, if
Mhm.
I know for a fact that if I want to watch a 90s action film, I
Mhm.
don't go to Netflix. I go to Amazon Prime or maybe
Right.
Tubi or something like that. But like, I'm irritated by commercials the way that the Tubi and everything like that does it. So I go to Amazon
Yeah.
Prime and I watch my 90s action
Yeah.
films that I want to watch. And I know that obviously the kids don't want to watch those, and
Yeah.
totally understandable. They're terrible, and a lot of them are uncomfortable when it comes to like if you actually rewatch them, like Commando and Cobra and things. Like I
Yeah.
started trying to watch Cobra again, which is what was one of my favorite
Yeah, yeah.
childhood films, and I'm like, oh no, this is
Yeah, there's a lot of
terrible.
that. I mean, I put on Flight of the Navigator recently.
Mhm,
Um, because I was like, maybe I could show this to my kids.
mhm.
And like I'm always torn, like I don't want to overly
Yeah,
coddle. I don't want to shield people from the universe. However, like within the first 20 seconds of Flight of the Navigator, the main character calls somebody a retard. And I'm
yeah.
just like, I don't know, man. Maybe not that.
Yeah,
Like
that's
maybe not in
it's
the
a
first 20
yeah,
seconds.
yeah. It's such an uncomfortable thing because there is a lot of things where I'm just like, I just want to watch. I want the original. I want, what I want the DVD of. I want the like. This is why one of the, again, maybe even the soundtrack, like, because obviously on Netflix, and every other
Yeah.
platform you can do like Spanish, English, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, what I want is the like 90s kid like thing where I'm like, look, I can listen to Goonies the same way that every other 90s
Yeah. Yeah.
kid can listen to Goonies. But if I'm trying to watch Goonies with my, 6-year-old, 5-year-old niece or whatever, whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, there's a different version. I'm like, I don't want them to hear the F word, pretend, FAGG,
Yeah.
word. I mean, honestly, I don't care about fuck, shit, motherfucker. Those aren't
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
word, but I'm just like, don't want to hear the R word. Don't want to hear, there's just certain words and certain things where I'm just like,
Yeah.
that I'm okay with dubbing. I don't even care about the guns. Like I want, if I'm ever gonna show ET to
Yeah. Yeah.
a younger relative of mine, it's gonna be the fucking original version because
Right.
it's ridiculous that they're chasing after them with walkie-talkies. That's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Like they live in the modern society. They know that guns fucking exist.
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
fucking kidding me? Like
Um, I don't remember where I was before
yeah.
we got off on that tangent, but uh, in any event, there's we're coming up on what we intended to be the end of the
Yeah.
time, but there's a thing that there's a couple things I want to talk about briefly.
Mhm.
One of them is a home video thing, and then there's some kind of housekeeping stuff. So you and I haven't talked on the show since They announced that Disney will be subcontracting their
Wow.
home video distribution and production
Yeah.
to Sony.
Yeah.
Um, Disney is no longer going to be making or distributing their own DVDs. So far, we don't know how that is going to impact distribution, how that's going to impact title selection and availability and all this kind of stuff. Like everything's very much in the dark. Um, the one thing we do know is that as part of this deal, Disney is shuttering the Disney Movie Club.
Yeah.
Which I believe they started in like 1999. I know that in the early going, it was like you could get VHS there. There are some very, very expensive VHS tapes that were only available through the Disney Movie Club in the waning days of tapes and the beginning of DVD. Um, but so the Disney Movie Club is closing down, which has been handled very poorly. They told everybody, "Hey, we're closing soon," and everybody went to try to make their orders. And like I put through an order, got charged, my like $85 or whatever,
Yeah.
and then over the course of the following 8 weeks, got two separate letters in the mail that said, "Oh, one of the things you paid for isn't available anymore. We're going to send you a refund." Um, and especially annoying because one of them was not for me. One of them was like a thing where somebody was like, "Oh, you're in the DMC. Can you get me this one exclusive,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, um, the not Run DMC? It's just,
Yeah. No, I get. Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
but so like, excuse me. I don't think that it's much of a loss in the scheme of things for the Disney Movie Club to go away. I suspect a lot of the things that were exclusive to the Disney Movie Club are now going to be like on uh some version. Like I think they probably will be more available
Mhm.
instead of less. Like there's a bunch of stuff that was easy to find on DVD, but if you wanted the Blu-ray, you had to go to the Disney Movie Club.
Yeah.
Flight of the Navigator is one of those. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was one of those. The Freaky Friday and Parent Trap movies with Lindsay Lohan and a bunch of other stuff like that.
Mhm.
And my guess is that those will end up out there somewhere.
Yeah.
It's very possible they'll end up like at Mill Creek, like subcontracted by Sony, and like all the ones that like, Sony will take the Marvel and Star Wars shit, and then they'll subcontract out
Yeah.
the things that nobody's going to buy more than 1,000 copies of.
Yeah.
Um,
I still dream of doing of like the way that Warner used to do it, and I don't even know how much they still do it. Of like, why don't they just do on-demand shit? Like,
yeah,
if
I
it's a
don't get it.
film that's digitized,
Yeah,
let me go and physically buy.
yeah,
Let me pay $40. Like, if that's what it costs. Like, there's
right.
just certain films like that, I mean, especially when it comes to like the weird archival stuff that like
Yeah,
when you talk about like the history of Disney and you talk and all the I mean, the bigger thing is that all the companies that Disney owns now, like
yeah,
not
oh
even
yeah,
just Disney. Like Disney has put out basically everything. If you want one of Disney's films,
yeah,
you can get it. You just have to pay
right,
for it, potentially a large amount. But
right.
like everything that Disney owns now, we're just like, just put everything that's been digital and everything's been
Yeah,
digitized now, except for fucking Homicide Life on the Streets. Um, but
yeah,
which I will eventually do once I get a
yeah.
DVD thing.
I will
Sorry,
say,
sorry, Simon.
no, no, no. I mean, the Fox thing kills me.
Mhm.
Like the fact that they appear to be just vaulting almost all of the Fox
Yeah.
movies, and it's just like that. Hopefully, with Sony doing DVD,
Mhm.
they will have access to those titles and they won't just go away. That in and of itself might be a good thing for Disney in terms of brand consistency because you can put Fox movies out, R-rated movies out, all these things,
Mhm.
and not worry about having the Disney castle appear on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
opening. You know what I mean? Um, which again, ostensibly was why they closed down like Touchstone and Hollywood and all their little like art house imprints once upon a time, was because they were like, well, we really want to get back to the bread and butter of our brand, which is family entertainment and
Yeah. Yeah.
mm, but
Yeah.
but so anyway, that's something that I wanted to talk a little bit about just because like it's interesting to me. I think Sony is a great choice because obviously Sony makes the hardware And
Yeah.
so as long as there's still DVD
Mhm.
players being made, Sony is unlikely to stop printing DVDs because like
Yeah.
they benefit on both sides of
Yeah. They're
the
one of the
equation.
few places making 4K discs.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they're going to still be wanting to make them.
Yeah. Sony does have a history of taking some of their smaller or lower performing titles and subcontracting them out to like boutique labels. I
Mhm.
mentioned Mill Creek. Mill Creek has done a bunch of Sony movies.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me to see them try to get some more Disney movies into the Criterion Collection. Obviously, that seal got broken earlier this year because Wall-E became the first. I think it's the first Disney movie, definitely the first Pixar movie
Yeah.
ever in the Criterion Collection. Um, which I love Wall-E, and I do think it's probably my favorite Pixar movie, but it's kind of wild that like that's the first Disney movie in the
Yeah.
Criterion Collection.
Yeah.
Um, but again, Disney prior to this moment has never really wanted anybody else to have their hands in
Yeah.
Disney's pocket. And so
Yeah.
it's like if you maniacally control every aspect of your presentation, distribution, and blah blah blah,
Yeah.
then like of course you don't work with Criterion because they want control on some level, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Uh
Yeah. I mean, especially as that completely, oh God, what's I have it somewhere, the screenshot of the ads that are running continually on Twitter. The lunatic that's the billionaire that's trying to take over, get a seat on the
oh,
board.
Nelson Peltz.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, who is running ads on everything. I mean, I don't even know how much money. I don't know. I
Mhm,
don't know how much money you spend to get ads on Twitter. Like
mhm.
it's already out of my budget. Like because I've tried to run ads on Twitter like before Musk and they were out of my budget, but
Yeah.
now Lord only knows, but like he's running I see them all the fucking time
Mhm.
on X on Twitter and it's just like the idea of like wanting to destroy what Disney has become over the last 30 years and a massively
Yeah.
incredibly successful thing and because because he's obsessed with like Marvels didn't do that well because there was an all-women cast
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know why do you have an all-black cast and it's like well Black Panther made like a billion fucking dollars but okay.
And also it takes place in a fictional nation that's fucking secluded away from humanity in Africa. Like but yeah.
I mean, never mind. Like, I mean, just like you have casts that like inherently are all black or all women because the story is being told in Africa or the
Yeah.
story is being told in Australia or you know or London, and it's just like
Yeah.
you have these like casts, which is like, I mean, but anyway, but it's is hilarious, like because it's gotten you know
And
it's
I
gotten a
mean
lot of
the other
media
thing is
attention and
too,
steam. But yeah,
like he's getting all this attention and he's putting all this money into it right now
yeah,
because things have been shitty for 6 months for Disney.
I know.
And so
And also, like again, like
but
which is something I always love, like shitty in quotes, like
yeah, yeah.
shitty, like
But like also he was already on the like he's already tried and failed to do this twice
mhm,
before. And
mhm.
like one of them was in like 2021 when it was like,
Yeah,
oh, we didn't make the same amount of money we did pre-pandemic. It's like, oh, you mean that both Star Wars and the Avengers didn't somehow find a way to end their saga again this year? I'm
yeah, yeah.
sorry. Like,
I know, but it is one of those like it's also like Disney. No, like Lilo and Stitch didn't do well when it came out.
right.
I think that Lilo and Stitch has done well now. Like,
Yeah.
never mind the spawn of like a dozen different shows
Yeah.
and like what we're talking about, three different movies, like one direct to video, like a multi-season TV show, and now like I don't even know.
Just an
I bet that the
avalanche of
marketing,
products.
what's
Yeah.
that?
Just an avalanche of product. Like
Well, I mean, like
literally
as a Lilo and Stitch fan,
yeah.
like I
There's a
love
Stitch
it,
mug at the
but
drugstore by my
yeah,
house
yeah.
now.
And
And
I'm
it's
just like,
like,
I think that they probably made their money back
yeah,
times 10. And that's the way Disney shit always ends up fucking working.
yeah.
Yes, is there like, oh my God, what's that? It starts with an S. There's a recent one that came out that like, I just don't
Strange
understand.
World.
What's that?
Strange World.
No, Wish. Oh, it's Wish.
Oh, Wish.
Wish came out, and I'm like, just something like that, where I'm just like, oh, it's like, yeah, that might probably. It didn't feel like watching the trailers and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know where the branding opportunities are from that type of thing,
Yeah,
but it's just like, no, like they have an amusement park, they have multiple amusement
yeah,
parks, they have all these different things where it's just like, no, like it'll make its money back, it'll do its
yeah,
well, like it doesn't always need to be just like oh it's because it's but like his focus, which is singularly on we need more white, basically we need more
yeah,
white men oriented stories, we need
yeah,
Cinderella again, which is, you know, like or Beauty and the Beast and that type of thing, where it's just
yeah,
like it's also, it doesn't work that way, where it's just like you also have other animated studios now, but anyway.
yeah. Um, but yeah, Peltz is a fucking train wreck, and I do not expect him to be successful on
Oh
Wednesday. There's an outside chance, I guess, because obviously like things aren't as good as they have been the last 5 years. But I do think that most people who are deeply invested in the company
mhm.
probably understand that like everybody in the industry is on fire right
Yeah,
now, and it's not going to help you any to fuck up the last year that you have of Bob Iger before he retires again.
yeah. Well,
Like,
I mean, the other problem too, that I mean, the bigger, I think for me, the bigger worry is because I mean, like, I could necessarily give two shits about care about Disney. Like, it's not a company that I've ever really liked, you know, and like only recently have become like, okay, I guess I have to defend this terrible fucking company that I used to
yeah,
boycott as a kid, which is so weird.
yeah,
Um,
because like lunatics on the
yeah,
far right have chosen this as their like hobby horse.
yeah, but it's because they've dared to like basically have, you know, diversity in there, because they've
Yeah,
just dared to be like, wait a minute, there's his black and Hispanic people and gay people that love our brand. Maybe we should
yeah,
have a product towards them.
that they can fucking
How
buy. Yeah,
dare you? Like, and so it's just one of those like, but it's like one of those things that are like worries me, where it's just like if every corporation known to man that produces art, very specifically, like I'm going to consider Disney films and Disney product art.
mm,
If it needs to produce, you know, $1 billion or whatever a year as
hmm,
like whatever the percentage is, obviously
yeah, yeah,
Disney versus what Paramount versus something else produces,
yeah,
obviously, but if it needs to produce 1,000% return every single year,
yeah,
then you're not going to ever produce fucking good art. You're just going to produce shit every
yeah,
single fucking year, especially considering what made what made $500 million, you know, whatever, like 30 years ago,
yeah.
what these guys like
Or
this type
5
of
years
guy.
ago. I mean,
Yeah.
honest to God, like there was I think as bad as the movie was,
Mhm.
it was entirely reasonable for Warner Brothers to go into last year thinking The Flash realistically could be $1 billion movie.
Yeah.
Like that it's not that far-fetched. Fucking Aquaman made $1 billion.
Mhm.
You know, it's things are changing so quickly, and it's not just like it's not as simple as superhero fatigue, and it's not as simple as the fact that the movie's kind of shitty, because like lots of kind of shitty movies that
Yeah.
like catch the lightning
Yeah.
also manage to make a shitload of money. Like but you know that you have to be nimble on your feet right
Yeah.
now, because like people like I think that the MCU's like decade of dominance over Hollywood
Yeah.
um is over. And that doesn't mean that I don't think that you're going to see another $1 billion Marvel movie in the next three
Yeah.
years. It just means that I think that like now you don't have like you can't just point to a thing and be like, oh, we're going to copy that and make a shitload of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
Like now you're going to have to figure out what's the next thing. Somebody's going to have to invent the next thing
Yeah.
so that then you can copy it. You know.
It's the irritating thing, especially considering I've been having this like weird not continual conversation, but this weird conversation with Galen Hurd
Mhm.
on Twitter,
Yeah.
who's the executive producer on like everything you watched in the fucking 90s, like
Yeah.
executive producer on Walking Dead, Terminator, T2, The Abyss,
Mhm.
Punisher, Armageddon, Aliens,
Yeah.
and Terminator, and Tremors, which is I didn't know she was
Oh yeah, I
and
noticed that last time I watched, I think.
yeah. but it's just like because I'll like randomly mentions like I'll like she'll be tweeting about something. I'm like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
like you also did this. But it is one of those like the only thing I wish that would come out of this like fucking conversation and like something that even she seemed to be somewhat, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but like she seems to be like, yeah, that'd be really nice to not have like only 300 because I think the Flash's problem
Mhm.
was that it was a what $250 million film.
I think 289 is the
Too
reported
many.
budget.
Okay, yeah. And so like if it was a 150 film,
Yeah,
175 or even 200 film, like it would have reached no. And like I think that expectation because like I mean we both have this incredible like irritation about this obsession with box office that
right.
didn't exist 15 years ago, 10 years ago. Where like yeah it was a conversation but like oh no, like if a film didn't do well, that sucks. That film was awesome though. Like
Yeah,
it wasn't a thing that like had any influence on my love or dislike. Same thing with like the
yeah,
fucking
yeah. It
we should do
wasn't.
it. We at some point should do an entire show on Rotten Tomatoes and about how like
Yeah,
destructive they are for cinema. But like she was because I was just like people were talking about I forget whether I brought it up and then she responded or whatever. But like I had just bought I got a friend of mine who's a former film student, Ford Fisher, who's another documentary filmmaker, he's a friend of mine. And I'd been trying hilariously, this is like the physical media, like hilarity thing. He was hanging out at my place and I tried to watch, I have a very nice copy from Arrow of Tremors, the like
right.
deluxe edition or whatever,
Yeah, the book one.
and I think it's only 4K, and I only have a Blu-ray player. And so I
Yeah,
tried to play it, it wouldn't play. And then I was just like, okay, no worries. I own it. Like I own it on Vudu. And for some reason at that moment in time, Vudu had this weird color issue, some weird digital abstract thing going on with it. And so I couldn't play it on that. And so I literally need it. I found it on fucking like Tubi or something, whatever, some other
yeah, yeah,
site that we had to watch it on. And like, I was just like, we got halfway through it and it was just so irritating. I was just like, and he was like, he had to go. And so I was literally, I'm like, okay, well, you just need to watch the movie at some point because I'm like, I know it's for you. And I bought him a
yeah,
Blu-ray copy of it because it was like $7
yeah.
online. And so like he fucking fell in love with it. And like he literally bought the like he bought the like there's a
The
four
six
disc
movie set
no, no,
or
no,
whatever.
four. I think it's four. And I was like,
Okay.
oh, Ford, don't you know there's two more?
Yeah.
He's like, wait, what? And I was
There's
like, and
yeah,
the
there's
last
I
two
think
are
there's
actually better than the last four
there's
or the last three.
I think there's 7 movies total, right?
Oh,
Or is
I
it
don't
six?
know. I know that the
And
sixth one was the Arctic, right?
yeah, and
And
then I have because I can't see it from here.
anyway, that's not the point
I
of the story.
I have the weirdest thing because I have like the set,
Yeah,
like the set you're talking about
yeah.
that's like all of the movies up to that point,
Mhm.
but like it doesn't
Oh no,
include the last
he
one.
bought like a $10 version because I was like, oh, there's a bunch more films as
Yeah,
well. And so he's like, oh, I found this like $10 version on Amazon that had
yeah,
1 through 4. And I was
yeah.
like, oh, Ford, I'm so sorry. There's two more. And I was just like, I sent him the links of like, like the
Yeah,
like IMDb or whatever. And he's like, wait, what? And I was like, and these two are actually really good, like in the
yeah,
fun,
they were
kind
a
of the
lot of
same
fun.
fun
The
way that the
seventh,
first one
the
is.
last one, what I can't remember if it's 6 or 7, but the
Yeah.
the last one was not as good as five
Yeah.
as the two that came before it, mostly just because like they got to the point where I think that Universal wants to reboot the thing and do like a
Yeah.
blockbuster
Yeah.
version. And so they got to the point where they're just like, okay, well, we have to end now. And they weren't really building to ending. And
Yeah.
so,
Oh, okay.
but
Yeah. Shrieker Island. I don't know if you've
yeah,
seen Shrieker Island.
I don't know. I talked to Michael Gross after it. Um,
Maybe I did then.
and
I'll have to rewatch it because I know that we talked about it after you talked to
yeah,
Gross,
talked to Gross.
but yeah, anyway,
Yeah. Um,
um I'm trying to remember what that rant was about like it was connecting to it to
you're
Tremors, but
talking about
oh
the
no, but it was oh no, because I was just like, oh, it's like it made like over $100 million at the box office, and it was only made for 10 mil or made for like 10 million or something. And
yeah.
she corrected me. She was like, actually, it was made for like I
Oh
think it was
yeah.
8.1 or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I was just like, that's what we need to like. And people like asked her as well, talked to her, was like, wouldn't that be great if we could get kind of back down to like
Yeah.
whatever the equivalent. Obviously, it's not going to be 10 million. You're not going to
Right.
make a Kevin Smith film
Yeah.
that's an action film for, the price. Um, and like make a $25 million, $50 million action film, and that can make, because like I immediately turn off when I hear the box office conversation, because
Yeah.
I just don't, first off, I'm like, I just don't fucking care. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why I care as a consumer of video, other than if I want the best version. Like, I don't want a $150 million version of Dread, because I know that it's not going to be as good as the fucking goddamn fantastic,
Yeah.
60, $80 million,
25 million
whatever.
or whatever it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
Whatever it was that was released that needed to meet that down, like
Mhm.
that amount version. And like, that's the only reason that I care about that at all in any way, shape, and
Mhm.
fucking form.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's funny because like for a while I was more like people would get upset about it and I'd be like, well, people have interest in box office because
Mhm,
it needs to be successful for you to get more.
mhm.
But now that like franchises never
Yeah.
die and you're always guaranteed more, it's like, okay, well that logic's kind of out the window.
Well, I want my biggest thing is that I'm like, I always want, like, because I know that the 12 IQ minds
Mhm.
of people that care about this financially, which I also totally get, where it's just like, you're terrified, you're investing $400 million into this
Yeah.
film, whatever, and like, and you need at least to get money back, and especially considering our like seeing like Men in Black theoretical Hollywood numbers, where Men in Black never made any money,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, type of thing. And but seeing like that type of thing, where it's just like, no, I wish that like if we could ever have, like, that's why like Prey, like the Predator film Prey, um,
Yeah.
made for a relatively smaller budget, on the kind of Predator scale of what it could be,
Yeah.
especially considering how known that brand is and everything like that. Where I'm like, oh my God, it would be great if we got more of those, because that film was fucking goddamn fantastic.
Yeah.
It was a
And it does
solid
look like
watch.
Disney's doing that with Hulu right now because they also
Yeah.
have an Alien movie coming
Yeah.
out that from what I hear is in
It,
that same
I
like
think, but I think it's also one of those things where it's just like, I think that that's what Disney is missing to some extent, where it's
yeah.
just like Iron Man. Yeah, Iron Man was a big budget risk. It was whatever hundreds of million,
Yeah.
whatever hundred was 180 or something like that. It was a relatively, for the time period, it was a big budget risk. And then it made a ton of money. And Captain America was also equivalent, but they weren't spending $400-500 million the way, or whatever, when you consider marketing and everything else. They weren't considering spending like $280 million the way that Flash is, on building a character that, like, yes, people know who the Flash
Right.
is, but it's not Superman, it's not
Yeah.
Batman. Like, there's two, I think that like one thing that like everyone needs to fucking recognize, there's only two characters that anyone fucking cares about, and it's Batman, Superman, and then Spider-Man.
Hmm.
And like, and Spider-Man for the most part has been carried by the fact that, like, you have a relatively known actor, maybe not known, but like a hot actor playing
Yeah.
it. And like, never mind the fact that I think that Andrew Garfield was the best Spider-Man out of all the Spider-Mans. Um, like, I think that shows also why like Andrew Garfield Spider-Man didn't do as well as whatever, even
Yeah.
though I think they were the best Spider-Man films, especially considering Tobey Maguire is a piece of shit. But anyway, that's a story I can't tell.
Um, I think too, it's really interesting to see the way that people are like looking back at the last now that we're starting to see some train wrecks, like real train wrecks
Yeah.
in the big blockbuster spectacle space. You have a lot of people who are looking back and being like, oh, maybe Brandon Routh and Andrew Garfield got shit on unfairly because they were just in a bad movie.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you think maybe that's what happened? You know?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
uh,
I agree with you on both of those. The only thing I would disagree is that either of the Spider-Mans that Andrew Garfield were in were bad movies. I think they were both the best Spider-Man movies
I
other than
love the
the
first
animated
one.
films.
I watched the second one very recently because I'd
Mhm.
heard so many bad things about it. I put it off and put it off. And I thought it was really, really good. I didn't think it was nearly as good as the first one. But a lot of that I think was just because like I was watching Jamie Foxx do his Jim Carrey and Batman Forever
That
impression.
was that Jamie
Um,
Foxx was the bad, like, which is one of those like arguments of like, I
which
don't think
kills me
Jamie
because
Foxx
like
is a
Jamie
great
Foxx
actor.
is so fucking good. that
He
like,
can be really good, but he also can be really fucking terrible.
yeah,
I think that's, again, like the Jim Carrey kind of
yeah,
comparison is great. Jim Carrey can be one of the best actors working in America at any given moment, but he also can be one of the worst actors
yeah,
working in America at any given moment. And it's unfortunate. Like it's also unfortunate because I think Jamie Foxx was handed a bad role.
yeah,
And his look of like you're gonna give a guy that is like just normally fit and like good looking, and you're gonna
yeah,
specifically try to make him bad looking,
yeah,
like give that role to somebody else. And then like Paul Giamatti, which I still love. I think we always forget as a society that Paul
yeah, yeah. That he's
Giamatti
in
played
those.
fucking Rhino.
Yeah. Uh,
Like that's my biggest, honestly, watching that film and as a long-term Paul Giamatti fan, like the way that people are now. Like I was an
yeah,
OG
yeah,
Paul Giamatti fan in the same way that, like Stanley Tucci, the way that people are
yeah.
Stanley Tucci fans. I'm like OG, like awkward white guy. Like um the fact that he was like, I'm like, oh my God, the fact that we might see him as a fucking Rhino in a
Oh, I know.
sequel, like where he gets like a full, not just like a brief moments like he did
Yeah,
in that second one. And I was like, that was my biggest disappointment of no third Andrew Garfield
yeah,
film
yeah.
was I'm like, I don't care about like Andrew Garfield I like, but like we don't get a third, we don't get like fucking Paul Giamatti.
It's like, what's his name?
Academy Award
Dylan.
winning.
I can't remember the guy's last name. Dylan something. The guy from Delirious, the John Candy movie,
Mhm.
um, who was supposed to be the lizard in the Sam Raimi movies, and that they like put it off and put it off and put it off, and then it was like finally in number four, he's the villain, he's the guy. We're gonna do the lizard. I know we've been teasing it since the
Yeah.
first movie, and then it's like, no, we're not making that fucking movie.
Uh,
um, I gotta sleep, man. But
yeah, no.
I final thought about the whole
Sorry. Before you, I was like, who is that in Delirious? And I forgot that Jerry Orbach was in Delirious. And I'm like,
Oh
I
yeah.
now I don't like AI, but if somebody wants to do an AI version of Jerry Orbach being the lizard, I might pitch in a couple bucks to see that.
um I think I'm not positive, but I think Jerry Orbach's wife in Delirious was actually Weird Al's aunt from UHF. Uh,
That's awesome.
um thing I wanted to say, and we've talked
Mhm.
about this I think before, but I can't stop thinking about it. Um the Snyderverse was this kind of shocking disaster for Warner Brothers, in large part because um, they couldn't understand what was going wrong the whole time.
Mhm.
And at some point early in the process, there were these rumors, and they were pretty well sourced rumors, that like Warner's plan and or Snyder's plan, I don't know whose idea it was, but was that basically you do a Justice League movie or Justice League like one of those characters, one of those five people. And then during the off years when you didn't have a Justice League movie, you would do some other B or C tier DC property, and you would spend like 50 to 75 million on a small movie for
Mhm.
these other DC properties. And so the idea was like, okay, so we'll spend $200 million on Aquaman and make $1 billion. And then the next year, we'll take a break from the $200 million movies and we'll make a $50 million Booster Gold movie or,
Mhm.
whatever. And I was like, this is fucking perfect. This is a great way to do this.
Yeah.
And the first of those movies was supposed to be Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Um, and then, as far as I can tell, what happened was that they got Will Smith and were like, well, now it's a $200 million movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, Will Smith could have absolutely murdered a more modest version of that, like a $50 million version of that movie that was more of a character
Yeah.
study.
Yeah.
Like Will Smith could have murdered it. You
Yeah.
guys would have, it would have been a fucking gem.
I mean, I was like, is I remember vaguely hearing that conversation like after the film, and
Yeah,
it's like going like Will Smith at that point in his like, okay, we're not talking about like early 2000s Will Smith
yeah, yeah.
or even like, or God forbid, like mid 90s Will Smith. We're talking about like 2020, 2019,
17, I
whatever it
think.
was,
Yeah,
Will Smith. So I'm like, okay, you give him points.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
film,
He just done
like,
Pursuit of Happiness for like
yeah,
$8 and a fucking
yeah.
taco and 20 points on the back
He's
end.
done 3
Like,
bombs in the
yeah,
most recent. He's still like one of the biggest actors in the world because he's Will fucking Smith and everyone
right.
loves him. He hasn't slapped anyone yet. And which to be fair, like that only expanded my love of him. Because fuck Chris Rock in that moment. But it is it is one of those like yeah, I've never understood that conversation when
Yeah,
it comes to like, oh, we need to expand the budget now. Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, again, like I could understand it if it was like if it was a Will Smith initiated thing, if it was like an ego thing, and he's like, no, but I want to be in like a Superman kind of movie.
Yeah.
You got to make this a blockbuster. But like as far as I can tell, it was just like, holy shit, we got Will Smith. This is a different movie now, and it wasn't
Yeah.
instigated by the actor. It was like a
Yeah.
studio note, and it's like, again, I don't know that David Ayer would have done a masterful character-driven version of the movie for 50 million bucks.
Yeah.
I don't even know if Ayer was attached when they were talking about it being a small, cheap movie.
Yeah.
But I do know that like the moment they abandoned that and then continued to abandon it and never looked back at the idea that maybe we make some that aren't $300 million movies,
Yeah.
was the moment that the like DC extended universe, Snyderverse, whatever you want to call it, was functionally doomed. Because like once BVS didn't make $1 billion and the studio started freaking out, because 958 or whatever it was is not enough.
Yeah.
And so like once that movie didn't make $1 billion and the studio started freaking out, it's like you're never going to do better than Batman v Superman.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
unless you have a remarkable, like something really special.
Yeah.
Like Wonder Woman and Aquaman both did better than BVS on the strength of like how much people were excited for those movies. Um, but like,
But after that, you need like as I'm much as I'm bereft to say it, but like you need a Joker, like something that like confuses the fuck out of
yeah,
everyone that didn't make any sense on why that did so well, kind of thing.
yeah,
But yeah, but it's also like I've never understood the Hollywood budgets where it's like you paid the salaries of people that were there. Like
yeah,
the drip down again of like, okay, so this film made $900 million and it paid all of this other stuff that's going on. But like,
yeah,
since it's very specific because of Hollywood budgets and bullshit that's just made the fuck up. And we
yeah,
can go, oh, this doesn't make sense. But like, what I don't understand is people inside. I can understand Variety and like all the like bullshit trade publications and the Twitter accounts and things like that being like, oh, it only made this much money.
mhm,
But I don't understand the people that are in on the inside going, no, all of our paychecks were paid for the fucking year for this movie while we made
yeah,
other things.
yeah,
Like, I mean, like, what are you talking about? Like, you made
yeah. And
two
again,
other
like
films while
the
this film was being processed and all the other stuff under the budget of that. Like,
yeah,
if those films made $2, that budget should be under that. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
It's again, like we've talked about it a bunch of times, but it's like it's so much of it is just like utterly out of touch managers who are just like we need to hit a number because
yeah,
like number good,
yeah.
and
Well,
fucking
that's my big obsession with like every single time I see some asshole, especially all these like random the Creative Crave accounts and stuff like that, like
mm,
the random like they don't produce anything themselves. They just talk about other articles and spin it. Kind of in the
yeah,
same way that we've had political accounts like Twitter accounts on social media for ages doing it, but now we have entertainment accounts doing the same goddamn thing for like, oh, the Variety article and here's the quote that we're pulling and it's like, wait, this quote is completely out of fucking context.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
some random producer being irritated that the movie didn't make $400 million, and it's like, well, no, the quote is actually that, yeah, no, the producer's irritated it didn't make $400 because he felt like it should have made that
yeah,
much money because he was involved in it, not
yeah, yeah,
he's irritated that, I mean, like versus like, yes,
yeah,
if when I come out with a film, if it doesn't make $100,000, I'm going to be irritated that it only made 5,000 or something,
yeah,
whatever. And it's like one of those, like, okay, yeah, you're gonna pull this quote because everyone's obsessed for some fucking reason with budgets, even
mhm,
though you have no involvement with the budgets. You don't earn money because you're an MCU fan or a DCEU fan
Yeah.
or whatever. Because if Batman does really well, it doesn't do you any benefit. Because
Yeah.
you know
No.
what? Also, they're going to make another fucking Batman film.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
also going to make another fucking Superman film eventually. They're going to make another like Captain America film. I promise you, in 10 years, there'll be a new Captain America. There will.
Well, I
be.
mean,
There certainly will be a new Iron Man.
they're in post-production on a new Captain America movie.
Well,
right
you know, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
fair.
I know.
Actually,
What you mean.
I didn't even. I honestly didn't even think about that because like they've been. That's a different rant for me of how obsessed the new Captain America has been separated from the old Captain America.
All right, Zach, thank you. We will do this again sooner next
Yes.
time, and with a little bit more of a plan. But thanks to anybody who still hung in with us to the end of our many rants.
Yes.
Be back here by noon on the 5th day for more Emerald City Video, and always remember to rewind your cassettes.